Today I am going to discuss about producer consumer problem or the bounded buffer problem. Right? In this problem, in this bounded buffer, here what do you mean by this bounded buffer? Bounded buffer means there is a finite pool of buffers in which each buffer hold one record of information. Okay, you can understand with the help of this diagram also. Okay, and here we have two processes, producers, consumers. Okay, so here a producer process produces one record at a time and writes into the this buffer area. Okay, so whenever the producer produce, it will write in this buffer area, and consumer process consumes information one record at a time. Okay, so here this is a condition, one record at a time. When the producer will produces, okay, one record at a time, it will write in the buffer, and when consumer will consuming, okay, when the consumer will consume, it will consume one record at a time. Right. So the condition for this bounded buffer problem is number one, a producer must not overwrite a full buffer. It means when the buffer is full, then producer process cannot write in the buffer further, right? Then the second condition is a consumer must not consume empty buffer. It means when there is nothing in the buffer, then consumer process cannot consume anything. Okay, so when so the condition, first condition says that this producer process, if the buffer is full, then producer process cannot write in that buffer area, in that buffer pool. Okay, and when the buffer is empty, in that case the consumer process cannot consume further. Okay, and third condition is producer and consumer must access buffer buffers in a mutually exclusive manner. Okay, and the next condition, last condition is information must be consumed in the same order in which it is put into the buffers. that is first in, first out order, right? So these are some conditions in this producer consumer problem. Okay, so these are the four conditions. And now the solution for this problem is, this producer and consumer processes access the buffer inside the critical section because both the processes are sharing this buffer area. Okay, so the resources, the shared resources we kept in the critical section. Okay, so this buffer area is inside the critical section, and a producer enters in the critical section. If the producer process want to enter in the critical section, it checks to see whether an empty buffer exists. Okay, because producer need the empty buffer to produce or to write something into the buffer area. Okay, so whenever the producer process want to write or use this critical section or want to enter in the critical section, then it will check whether the buffer is empty, means ki there is a space in the buffer. Okay, if so, it produces right in the buffer area. Okay, otherwise it exit from the critical section, right? And this sequence is repeated, right? And until the producer finds the empty buffer. Okay, so here we will use the boolean variable, one boolean variable that is called produced. Okay, here we are using one boolean variable that is produced. Okay, and I'm writing the solution of this problem. In the similar way as as I have discussed about the producer process to use the empty buffer, okay, we can understand the in case of consumer also. Okay, so consumer will check repeatedly if the buffer there is something in the buffer area, means if the buffer area is empty, then consumer process cannot consume anything from the buffer area, and if there is something in the buffer area, only then the consumer process can consume. Okay, so we can write this. Here, first of all, this produced Boolean variable will be initially false. Okay, here I am writing the code for the producer. So how the producer process will consume this buffer area? First of all, this produced variable will be false. So produced equal to false. Produced is a Boolean variable here. Okay, and while this produced equal to false, if an empty buffer exists, then produce in the buffer and produce equal to true. Okay, right? So initially this produce variable is false, and while this produce variable is false, okay, it will check if this empty buffer area exists. Okay, So because the producer needs some empty buffer area to produce, if there is empty buffer area exist, then the producer will produce in the buffer area, and it will reset the value of this Boolean variable produced equal to true. Okay, produce equal to true means now this producer process is in this critical section. Okay, this red box, this buffer area is the critical section. Okay, now this process is in critical section. It is indicating this by resetting the value of produced variable as true. Okay, and when it comes out from this produce critical section, then it will do the remaining work, or will be in the remainder section. Okay, and this process will continue, right, for this producer process. In the similar way, if we talk about this consumer process, here initially this consumed equal to false. Here we have taken the variable consumed as we have taken here the produced variable as a Boolean variable. Here I am taking this consumed variable. Okay, it is also a Boolean type. Okay, so consumed equal to false. Similar, it will set the initial value false, and while consumed equal to false, it will check if a buffer exists. Okay, if the buffer exists means ki if there is something in the buffer to consume, then consume the buffer and consume equal to true. Consume equal to true means now this process is in critical section. It will reset the Boolean variable value as true. So here this work goes on in this critical section. And after that, the remaining work will be done by the process. It will be in the remainder section. Okay, so here we can see that all the conditions are met. Okay, like when there is nothing in the suppose when there is nothing in the buffer area, then consumer will not consume. Okay, consumer will consume only when there is something in the buffer area. In the similar manner, producer will produce when the buffer is empty, means there is a space in the buffer. If the buffer is full, then producer will wait in the entry section, in the outside the critical section only. It will enter in the critical section when it find the suitable condition. Okay.